Okay, welcome to Tech Hub. I am here with Michael Provenzano from Vistar Media. So tell us about your company.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got Vistar Media started about a year and a half ago, and we're the first ad platform for digital out-of-home media. So, layman's terms,
Please
that
explain
is that is every screen that is not a personal device. So you might see these screens in elevators owned by, say, Captivate or Wall Street Journal Office Network. You might see them in malls owned by AdSpace Media, doctors' offices, restaurants, airports, bars. So all this place-based media, what we've done is we've aggregated onto a single technology platform. So you can log into an interface, just like you might buy a banner ad. You can set up a campaign, upload a video creative, maybe one that you used on YouTube or Hulu, and set your targeting rules and hit go, and we literally will deliver these ads into all these different type of devices.
Well, I do a lot of work at Fox News, and they have the so is there a name for these things? What do we call them that are on the elevators?
Sure. Most of the time, people are referring to them as place-based screens or place-based media. They also get looped into digital out-of-home is another word for it. And out-of-home as a larger umbrella, usually people think of big billboards outdoors. So digital out-of-home and digital place-based usually refers to more of indoors versus the larger scope.
So then, do you guys create the programming for it also, or the material, or just the hardware?
No, we don't create the programming or the hardware. What we do is we work with digital ad agencies, and they might have, let's say Nike has an ad for a new shoe, and let's say they're buying ad space on YouTube or Hulu or anywhere an online presence that they're showing these video ads, maybe your mobile device. We're allowing them access to this inventory, of this physical world inventory, and just programmatically they can plug in their existing buying platforms into this and show that ad across all this media.
So then there's like multi-levels to all of this. There's
Oh,
going
yeah.
to be somebody that's going to create the actual advertisements that go on these things, and then there's you guys. There's also somebody that's owning the hardware.
Yes.
So how many billions of dollars of industry is this then?
Absolutely. Just ad wise, that's out of home as a whole is a $7.5 billion industry. About $2 billion of that goes into digital out of home today.
So so tell me about how you started the company and
Sure.
What the essence of it came from. How did you figure this out? You were on the elevator one day and you're like, wow, here's an ad space, we can do this.
Absolutely. So my business partner came from the financial world, and he was actually doing some research, like most financial guys are always doing, of different industries and opportunities, and he came across the out-of-home industry, and he came to me and he said, it's a very large industry. Have you ever looked into it? I said, no. He knew I had done work in online display advertising. Before this, I was a co-founder of Invite Media, which was the first demand-side platform for online display advertising, the banner ads you see online. And we sold to Google in June of 2010. So he said, well, it looks like there's an opportunity to do a lot of aggregation and things you guys did at Invite in a new company that's focused on this outdoor medium. So that's how he kind of looped me into it and said, let's take a look, let's dive in further, let's see the inefficiencies in this marketplace. And it's fascinating that it was a medium where it's still being bought and sold like a piece of paper. However, it's all internet-connected devices that should be bought and sold like a digital medium.
So are there ad agencies that just work specifically on this kind of product?
Actually, yes, there are. There are a few very large agencies within holding companies that are completely dedicated to out-of-home media buying. One you might be familiar with is Kinetic under WPP or PosterScope under Aegis, which is now Dentsu.
So this seems to be then it's a burgeoning market for this thing, because it's like for what my knowledge of it, Fox is one of the few places that has it. I think the Empire State Building does too. So then who goes and sells this to buildings, and what's the whole process?
Absolutely. So the people who actually own the screens, in the case of elevators, Captivate, they were a funded company that went out and went to owners of buildings and said, we're going to put these screens and we're going to revenue share with you based on these screens, based on the ad revenue we generate from these screens. Captivate actually was purchased by Gannett, actually owned by Gannett now. So these are essentially startups at one point in their lives. Usually, I think around 2005, 2006 is when a lot of these guys got started, VC-backed or PE-backed firms. A lot of capital always obviously required to buy screens, put them up, install them, and run these networks. So a lot of these guys did that, and they did it on a vertical, maybe office buildings, malls, bars, whatever it might be, and they really focus on those verticals. So you see these digital signage networks, as they're considered. You see these across the board, and they're essentially just very large media owners that might have thousands of screens scattered throughout the major DMAs in the United States.
So then, how did you start the company? And how long have you
Definitely
been in business?
Definitely. So we started researching in the kind of middle of 2011. We really started going out to ad agencies and understanding their needs a bit more. Probably Q3 of 2011, and we really got started and started building our engineering team out in January of 2012. And that's really when we got our first round of funding, and we really started building out the product. And we released that product in July of 2012, just for general ad serving, just the ability to get these dynamic ads down to the screens. And now what we've done, in December, we released essentially the full exchange, which allows for near real-time bidding of all of these screens across all networks to digital media buyers.
How much does one of these screens cost, like, to put it in an elevator?
Great question. Elevators are probably pretty difficult. I have to ask some of the guys over at Captivate.
This is the elevator pitch.
Yeah, yeah, right. They've changed a lot over time. When these guys put up screens, like again, 05, 06, 07, so a bit pricier than today. Today, it's so cheap to get them up. You can get if you're doing a larger screen, you might get a large LED screen for $500, and you've got to get maybe a piece of hardware that's probably an Android box, probably the same technology that's on my phone. Plug that in for $100, maybe round trip, getting the installation all up, maybe $1,000 for one of those screens to get up today. Some people even leverage maybe their smaller screens. They might leverage a tablet, like an Android tablet. They'll put it on against the wall, and it actually has a camera on it, so it can track eyeballs and count the number of people who actually saw the screen versus people who just walked by it.
Yeah, so you have a captive audience there. So do you actually track how many people are going to see an ad in a given day?
It's a great question. So Nielsen actually does that auditing and measuring. So they actually send people out, and then the media owners pay for this, of course. But they send people out to do those measurements. They sometimes will take a hard KPI, like let's take gyms, for example. They count the number of people who have come into that gym, because you can track that, obviously. And they say, here's the amount of people who are around the screen. And they do brand awareness studies of how many people even pay attention to that screen. So they take a hard number and they really reduce it down to calculate out what they consider gross venue traffic. And they take numbers like dwell time, how long is someone sitting there for. Something like a doctor's office, people are sitting there for usually quite some time. So they take those numbers in simple algebra, put it together, and they're able to say, every time I show an ad, it's equivalent to this many impressions. And it's that currency that allows us to buy the medium on a CPM basis, cost per mil, which is the same way that all online advertising is essentially purchased.
So it's like the circulation department in a magazine, or which is a dying business now. So this is really like the new wave of advertising.
It's definitely picking up, and what's interesting is the media owners today, they go after these out-of-home specialists, like you inferred, like people who buy only out-of-home today. But what we're doing is helping them out and giving them an incremental revenue opportunity by going after people who buy banner ads online, email ads, they buy the video ads on YouTube, the mobile ads. And we're saying, look, this is another screen that can be accessed in a digital way. It can be accessed programmatically and near real time, with the same kind of targeting rules that you target mobile on. I know the latitude and longitude of every single screen. You can get really, really precise of the location you want to hit people in, and about the context of that environment. I know it's an allergist office, for example. I even can look up the kind of stores that are in a mall. So you can go to a Macy's and say, do you want to be, surrounding your stores at all time and driving people closer to that point of purchase.
So then you're going to know who the market is and who the customers are.
Yeah, I believe that mobile, just like out of home, doesn't have a cookie. Online, you can target based on cookies. You can track people online, do all the behavioral type targeting. Unfortunately, we don't have that in our medium. It'd be a little creepy if we did. So we don't
Big
have.
Brother is watching.
Yeah, right. So what we are able to do, though, I believe, is you can take a few variables, which is location, the time of day and the day of week, and the context around that person's location, and you really can infer the audience that's there. I know what type of people are getting into an elevator in Lower Manhattan between 6 and 9 a.m. There's very little waste if I were to show those people ads. You know who that audience is in comparison to, say, driving by a freeway on a billboard.
So what are these ads? They have to be very impactful and fast. Then, if you're
That's the agency's
do you guys
problem.
That's the problem.
No,
with the agency?
yeah, I don't do
You
the
want to be
creative.
Successful. What's the average elevator ride time?
Absolutely, it's a good question. The average.
You must know that.
I should know that, but a lot of the ads, all the ads that we deal with are 15 or 30 seconds long. In elevators, 15 is more appropriate because I would imagine the average ride is under 12 seconds would be my guess. I can pull the numbers, but unfortunately, I don't have
there's always
a
a lack of comfort on elevators. Nobody ever talks to
perfect.
to anybody
Yeah.
on an elevator, so you do have the captive audience.
Mike DeFranza is CEO over there, and he always tells me, he's like, it's the best. I always check with everyone, and he checks with people. Have you seen the elevator ads? He's like, oh yeah, and they list off all the brands that they see on those elevator ads. That's brand awareness.
So this is like the new billboard. Really, it's a digital billboard in
Absolutely.
a lot of ways. There was a guy in New Jersey. I think this goes back like 15 or 20 years ago, who was a real estate agent, and he came here from India, and he saved like all the money he had, and he bought a billboard ad for himself, and people thought he was crazy, and he then became like the most successful realtor
Oh my God.
in New Jersey. So it's one of these. The whole idea of putting something on an elevator is really interesting because, it used to just be you'd have to listen to bad music
Absolutely.
on them. So instead, at least you can advertise a product that may really work well.
Out of home is a very high impact medium. I asked a lot of
Who
people.
came up with out of home?
I don't know. It was before my time. I can't fix it now. It's fascinating though. I talk to just people casually about it, and I say, what's the last banner ad you remember seeing? And they're like, I don't look at banner ads. Okay. What's the last TV ad you saw? Oh, I don't watch TV. I download it on my Roku box. Like, okay. You listen to radio? No, I don't listen to radio. Okay. Those are our generation's this type where it's like, well, how do I get you? How do I advertise to you as a brand? And so I say, well, for me personally, you can get me when I'm going to a meeting, in a cab, when I'm in an office building, when I'm in the airport, going to my next meetings, right?
So is this limited strictly to elevators, or you could what about
no.
cabs too?
Absolutely, cabs, yeah.
And you mentioned doctors' offices.
Doctors'
as well.
offices, yeah. There's a whole list of venue types, as we call them. There's probably about 15 different segments that we go across today. So we try to keep it as the reach as large as possible.
So then, what are the expectations for the future? How big are you guys going to be?
Good question. I think one of the biggest problems most of the media owners faced when they put up all the screens, right, was making back that capital investment and building sustainable companies. And obviously the way they do that is by driving ad revenue. And I think that they had a lot of trouble filling all the inventory, selling enough of the space, mainly because individually, you're selling one network worth of screens. However, if you put them all together in one, you have much larger reach across a nationwide footprint, and you're able to get on media plans with these agencies a lot easier. Not to mention, not only is the aggregation valuable, but when you're buying in this programmatic way, we can actually layer on a lot of third-party data providers that know a lot about the locations of users and how that data changes over time, how people's behaviors change throughout the day and just throughout the months of the year. And a lot of that data was never available before. A lot of the data that people have about census data, right, that's that's over multiple years. It's not changing dynamically, whereas as humans we are changing a lot throughout the day in what we're doing.
So I'm curious about the technology. Is this like hardwired, or how is the stuff loaded in?
Sure.
Into the hardware, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can almost think of it as there's a screen on a wall and there's a computer connected to it, and that computer is just like the computer that you work on every day. It's connected to the internet in some way, either a Wi-Fi connection or a hardwire, or sometimes even a 4G card like your cell phone. And it's calling out to the internet to some server at all times, just like a website would be, and says, give me some content, put some things on the screen, but also give me some ads. And so we're being called to fill that ad space. So people will call us and say, hey, I've got, a blank spot in 30 minutes from now. I've got 5 blank spots in 30 minutes from now. What do you have for me? Please fill this inventory. We respond instantly with the appropriate ads to serve.
And so, what else is going to happen? In terms of technology, with what you're doing. I mean, where else are you looking to grow and place these? What do we call them?
Yeah, these location-based media. One way to think about it. I think we're going to see two things. Our goal is to drive more revenue to these media owners, and if we're doing that, I think it allows for new people to come around and build more networks, put more screens up, because they know they can, day one, turn on these screens, point to our servers, and say, hey, help me monetize these screens, and so I can put up more and make larger networks. So I think you'll see that. You see this in China's a great example there, a very large amount of digital signage by coming on Focus. Where we will expand in the near future, it's really focused this year, we've done most of the place-based media, the smaller format, 60 inches, let's say, and below. That was our original focus as a company, and get all that inventory on board and start, pushing money toward those media owners. Next is to get into cinema, so pre-roll ads before the trailers come on. So all that time before the movie, those are ads being shown. Those are usually sold to TV media buyers. Inseam and Screen Vision are the two major providers there. And the other area, of course, is billboards. So there are a few companies that manufacture the digital billboards, and the Clear Channels, the CBSs, the Lamars of the world, they can't put up more billboards. So the only thing they can do to create more inventory is to go digital. So naturally, that inventory will go digital. There's municipality laws that make it a little bit slower than what they would like. But as that goes over, we of course can dynamically serve ads into those as well, because they're just internet connected devices.
So when are we going to hit a time where all billboards are going to become digital?
According to the Clear Channel CEO in an article I read, 10 years from now would be his future. But again, it's heavily around the municipalities. Sometimes people complain about them being too bright or obstructive for whatever reason, but the truth is, if they're too bright at night, just turn them down. It's a screen. It's not rocket science.
Is putting together a digital billboard's got to be
pretty expensive. I think
pricey.
I think it's in the hundreds of thousands, I think, to get one up and everything settled. But I think the return on investment, for most guys, they usually get their money back in a year, I think, is fairly accurate.
I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, this has been very interesting. Thanks very much. And do you want to plug your company a little bit more, or tell us anything we should know for the future?
No.
You're going public?
No, we're about 10 today, and we're growing pretty fast in New York. All of our sales and account management, everyone is really focused on driving revenue with digital agencies today. So just heads down, kind of hiring, bringing on new people, and going to everyone on Madison Avenue.
All right. Thanks very much, Michael Provenzano.